Less than 2 months remain for Texas lawmakers to debate and pass new bills, and now one state representative's fight to topple the Texas House Speaker is escalating. Brian Harrison filed a resolution to remove his fellow Republican, Dustin Burrows, as the chamber's leader. However, today, members voted overwhelmingly against moving forward with that effort.
Despite that, key committees are still taking up legislation this week. For instance, testimony lasting hours on a bill that could further regulate or even cut off Texans from buying products with THC in them. Now, we're joined this afternoon for context on all of this, as always, by two former state lawmakers to give us an inside scoop at what's going on at the Capitol. Dennis Bonnen here, former Speaker of the House, and Mark Strama, previously representing the Austin area. Welcome back to both of you.
Thank you.
We do want to start with what happened at the Capitol this morning, making headlines, the unsuccessful resolution to vacate the Speaker's position. To give our audience a bit of background, if they weren't with us in our 11 o'clock hour, Representative Harrison had a list of complaints against the leader of the Texas House of Representatives, Dustin Burrows. What do you make of this effort to oust him? It's been bubbling up under the surface, came to a head this morning. Yeah. And why did the House have to take that up today?
They didn't have to take it up today. Mr. Harrison has a right. It's a privileged resolution. The Speaker has to recognize him, but it's the Speaker's choosing. I think what you saw was incredible strength from Speaker Burrows today. He said, okay, Mr. Harrison, you want to challenge my leadership, you want to challenge my conservatism, what I've delivered to the House, let's do it. We'll do it right here, right away. You filed it yesterday. Let's get this done. 84 of 88 Republicans said, I support Dustin Burrows as my Speaker. One other member was absent, another one white-lighted. Mr. Harrison got his vote and one other freshman member's vote. This is all smoke, mirrors, and games by Mr. Harrison, who is not a serious member, who does not care about the people of Texas, does not want to do anything but create YouTube videos, TikTok videos, and social media influence for himself. This is a selfish man who doesn't give a damn about representing his constituents. And 84 Republicans today told him, we don't agree with your style. We don't agree with your bull. We don't agree with your attacks on the Speaker. We stand with Speaker Burrows. It was a powerful statement for Speaker Burrows today.
So Dennis, I was teaching this morning. Was it a motion to vacate?
It was a motion to vacate. 84 Republicans said, no thank you, Mr. Harrison.
Yeah, look, I was in the legislature, I think it was 2007 when we had a motion to vacate the Speaker, and the Speaker refused to recognize it. So it is a show of strength to say, I'll recognize it, let's vote on it. And to win the vote so decisively with only 2 people voting to vacate. That's a pretty strong show of force for the Speaker. Look, when he was elected Speaker on a bipartisan vote, coming into a session where the Republican base had been mobilized not to support a Speaker who had any Democratic support, which was a bizarre thing to rally around, but for some reason that's what the Republicans were rallying around at the time. He was elected with bipartisan support, and there were many Republicans at the time, led by Representative Harrison, saying, we'll never support this guy because Democrats support him. That's a toxic way to approach politics, and it's against the tradition of bipartisanship in the Texas legislature. And it is impressive that through his leadership so far, through his stewardship of the House and the process so far, he's consolidated even the people who voted against him on the first day of session.
Yeah, and we'll note that the vote was 141-2 to stop considering that resolution so that Dustin Burrows would remain in the House Speaker's position. But
hey, I know you want to move on.
No. I have one more question.
Okay, all right.
So how do you think this particular fight, though, affects the work that the House still needs to do? Because today there was 2 arguments made about these things being a waste of time. So Brian Harrison said that Dustin Burrows was wasting the time and not passing priorities. The other side of it was that Cody Harris spoke up in favor or against this proposal and said that that measure was a waste of time. So what do you think about that?
I think 141 members told you what they think about that today.
Right.
They said we're with our Speaker. Our Speaker, to Mark's point, Speaker Burrows, and to Mr. Harrison's point, in right about half of the session, has brought the entire House together. Basically, the entire Republican caucus has come together, went on record today and said, I support my conservative Speaker, Dustin Burrows.
Yeah,
Mr. Harrison, go away.
It's debatable who's brought them together, whether it's Speaker Burrows or Representative Harrison.
Well,
maybe it's a little
well,
both.
In fairness, Speaker Burrows, it is a little both, except for, what's today? It's Wednesday. Speaker Burrows has had breakfast with the governor and lieutenant governor every Wednesday, as he should be doing. The Speaker is working with the governor, he's working with the Lieutenant Governor, he's working to bring positive solutions to the House and to the people of Texas. And that's what you saw House members respond to. Speaker Burrows is meeting with members, he has an open door policy, he is available, and that's what you saw. Mark, you realize that. I mean, you know that. What do members want more than anything? They want a serious speaker who respects the members, has an open door, listens to the members, and wants their issues to be heard on the floor.
Yeah, look, the Democrats would love to have some policy wins, but they know they're in the minority, so they care a lot about process, being included, having a seat at the table, being heard. That's really the most you can expect when you're deeply in the minority, as the Democrats are. And the reason I was going to stop you if you were moving on is to make the point that we should move on. Because the truth is, and I talk to my students about this a lot, if you ask people on the street to name 5 members of the United States Congress, they're likely to name 5 people who are the least relevant to the policymaking process, but most relevant to the news media because they throw bombs. We probably shouldn't be talking about this at all. It was a non-event with a decisive, overwhelming majority supporting the Speaker, but the process allows people to exploit it to their own advantage in terms of news media. They don't further themselves as policymakers, but they probably raise a lot of money off of it, and they elevate their profile for setting themselves up for some future statewide ambition they might have.
You have brought us right to our next question. We do want to get to the policy today. We have a few policy questions, but there was another major headline yesterday as it relates to leadership in the Republican Party. We know Attorney General Ken Paxton made it official. He's challenging Senator John Cornyn for that Senate seat. So before we get to the policy, what does that do for the GOP? What does that look like for the party, this bombshell announcement of those two facing off?
I think national Republicans are probably not thrilled. You have, the President Trump's midterm election coming up. This will be in that cycle, obviously. And I think the national Republicans, the Republican Senatorial Committee, are probably saying the last thing we need is a really, really expensive primary in Texas when we need to be allocating dollars to ensure we win in November. And so I think on a national level, there are folks probably going, not a good use of funds. Senator Cornyn will raise millions upon millions. I think Mr. Paxton, Attorney General Paxton, will probably raise a lot of money. It'll be a highly competitive race. It's way early to predict where it comes out, but I think people in the Trump White House are probably sitting there saying, I really wish I didn't have to allocate resources to a Texas primary.
Yeah. What do you think that does to open a door for a Democrat?
Yeah, I was going to say, look, I also think, Democrats came close with Beto O'Rourke in 2018, came within 3 points of their first statewide victory since 1994. Ever since then, they've lost ground pretty decisively. As a Democrat looking for hope, there's some really outstanding young Democratic talent in this Texas legislature that you can see. But the biggest source of hope for the Democrats is Ken Paxton running in a primary against John Cornyn, because John Cornyn is not beatable in a general election. If the Democrats can win a statewide election in Texas, the one Republican they have a chance against is Ken Paxton.
And before we wrap up our conversation, because we're running a little low on time, but back at the Texas Capitol, one policy thing that we want to ask you about today. We heard hours of testimony this week about whether THC would be banned or further regulated here in Texas. A ban is, of course, a top priority for Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick, who has threatened to possibly force a special session over this very issue. What do you make about that threat? Is it serious?
Absolutely. Dan Patrick's proven time and time again he's serious when he makes these statements, and I respect Dan Patrick immensely for that. When I worked with him as Speaker, we worked really well together. Speaker Burrows is working very respectfully with the Lieutenant Governor, and the Lieutenant Governor is a man of his word. He lays out his positions, he lays out his desires, and he stands behind them. With that said, I do think that the Lieutenant Governor also understands that the House has a process. They're going to hold their hearings. They're going to talk through these issues, and they will probably, in the end, come to an understanding that'll be close to a ban, but probably allowing something to occur like the alcoholic beverages, or I guess they wouldn't be alcoholic, THC, CBD, whatever those beverages are. With that said, it will be exactly what this process is supposed to be about, which is the Senate passes their bill, the House passes theirs, they go to conference and they work it out. And I think that's where we're headed here. I think the way the Speaker is working with the Governor and Lieutenant Governor, and they're all working respectfully together, these issues will all be resolved in the end.
Any other response on that? We also want to note that it's support for not having a ban on these products is widely popular in Texas, polling shows.
I mean, that's where I was going to go with this. As a matter of policy, I don't really have an opinion on the process by which the sausage is being made here. As a matter of policy, I just don't understand what the objection is anymore. 20 years ago, 10 years ago, there were lots of fears about the consequences of legalizing access to THC. We are now surrounded by states, some of them very conservative states, that have legalized it with no demonstrable harm. As a part of this process that Dennis just described, I haven't heard any real data substantiating any real reason we should be afraid of this product. And what we've done instead is kind of make policy haphazardly. We kind of backed into legalizing THC unintentionally, and now they're having a debate over whether they have the courage to take something away from people that they inadvertently gave them. I think most Texans want it. I think this is a bad issue for Republicans to pursue. It's one opportunity where Democrats have to gain ground.
I disagree completely in the sense that because it isn't legal, you have an illegal market, therefore it's not regulated, it's not managed, it's not cared for. And I think that people are off on understanding this issue. It may poll in a certain way, but if you ask the question, are you comfortable with your underage children with THC, the answer is no, 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 no.
I mean, in one respect, we're making the same point, which is that we backed into this haphazardly. We should have the courage to make a policy decision. But
that's where, in fairness to the Lieutenant Governor, he is correct. We need to, and I'll put a more fine point, not that he needs me to speak for him, we need to make sure our children are nowhere near this product. And I think that's really what the Lieutenant Governor is most passionate about, is I do not want the kids of Texas having access to this product.
I think you'd get 150 votes for that in the House and 31 in the Senate, where I think the debate ought to be, and I think that we ought to do things to better regulate the product to protect vulnerable populations. But I think we ought to also protect the liberty interests of people who could go to other states and partake in that legally.
Well, we will, of course, keep following that. There will be much more debate on that issue and many others. So we appreciate, though, you, Mark Strama, and you, Dennis Bonnen, for joining us, as always.
Thank you.
Thanks so much. Well.